They, in fact, become the best battle buddies you could ever ask for in a unit. And I'll show you on another slide that our ability to intervene into gestures, ideations, and attempts is on the rise. And the reason it is because these young kids, we've got about 2,000 trained already in the first 2 modules, they bring awareness to the unit that we didn't have before. They're able to see things that many other soldiers can't see because they're trained to see them. And it's certainly combat power. And then that very bottom bullet, I hope that one day military spouses will be able to take this course. And as you've heard already, we're going to do that. And I spoke to Rhonda Cornum back in July, and I mentioned it, and she said, absolutely. That's we're already done many spouses already, and so I think that's something we really need to get behind. And our MTT, we'll have an FRG, and each brigade will be trained, and so we're going to get the spouses involved. Next slide. This is how we do it at our division level and at echelon, what are we responsible for. One of the key things is the units nominate resiliency trainers. You've got to have the right person. I'm sure Sergeant Major Johnson would agree. You've got to have the right clay to start with, yes, especially. And I gave very little guidance to my commanders when we picked the first batch of trainers to go off to Pennsylvania, but they did a terrific job. They picked the best of the best, and they're doing a terrific job. They are making a difference. But this is how we do it at echelon. Next slide. I call this, we started a thing called the Real Warrior Campaign, REAL, Responsible Educated Alcohol Limiting Warrior. General Schoonmaker, the Surgeon General today, said that the biggest problem we have with over-counter drugs in the Army is alcohol, because it becomes a tool to which people cope with. It is certainly the #1 problem in Korea is the management of alcohol. These young kids do not know what alcohol does to them, and so we've created this campaign. It's not one shot, one kill. It's a campaign over time. But I kind of sat down and scribbled one night on some paper. I said, our soldiers come over here, and they either get on Axis 0 real quickly, or they get on Axis Hero. And we want to keep them on Axis Hero so that they end up over on the right side of the chart there on the correct objective, because this sets the stage for their service in the Army, because, like I said earlier, most of them are on their first assignment. We want it to be a successful assignment. Next slide. This slide I'll talk about for a minute, and the Chief of Staff is really excited about this slide. At the bottom of the slide are the different colored lines that go across, and those represent blotter reports. Now, many of you know that a blotter report is an incident where the MP cites you for something, and then that goes to the commander, and the commander makes a decision on the Uniform Code of Military Justice on what kind of punishment. But there's always factors of mitigation and extenuation come into play, so just because you got blotted for something doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be punished. So you can see, it's really difficult to see, but property crimes, by the way, last year this time, I led the Army in everything that was bad. I led the Army in drunken disorderly conduct. I led the Army in sexual crimes and sexual SDIs, and everything was bad. And so what's happened is you can see the drop in property crimes, 76%, personal crimes. I've got issues with soldiers and property crimes, stealing in the barracks, and I've got a plan to take care of that. But sexual crimes are down 92%, DUI down 40%. And now those blocks you see on the chart represent things that we've done at the command level. You can see Real Warrior Campaign Plan begins. One of the key things down there is in the center of the second column, it says Warrior University. We let our soldiers off of work at 1,500 on Tuesdays and Thursdays to go to school. Last year we had 200, now we have 1,270. But at 1,500, they get off work and they go to class. Now, if you look on the chart, you see the red line that says crimes are down 60%. If you were to add all those blotter reports together, that's that red line. So they're down 60%. But the enrollment in continuing soldiers' personal education goals, Warrior University, is going up. So there's inverse relationship. And you can see where we started resiliency training, which obviously is more education. What I'm trying to say here is I think education is very key and essential to resiliency, because soldiers who are pursuing their personal education goals are not soldiers who are trying self-defeating behavior. You're not, if you're pursuing your goals, if you're goal-oriented, you're not going to try to kill yourself. So this is such a good thing. And we just put Wi-Fi in our DFACs. It costs $60 a month. And all the DFACs in the whole division now have Wi-Fi. And 1+1 is a good thing, but it's isolating soldiers. And so now they come together in a social setting, and the mess sergeant doesn't throw away the coffee at 6 o'clock. He leaves it there, and the Kool-Aid and other stuff. And the soldiers sit in there, and they do. Now that we open up online courses, it's widened the aperture in terms of courses that are available. And so it's just continuing to get better, which is really unique. And then up in the cloud on the left, you can see that what's happened is last year we gave out 700 Article 15s in the 2nd Infantry Division. 700 Article 15s, mostly on soldiers on their first tour, first assignment in the Army. Not exactly what you'd call getting off on the right foot. And so now that's been totally reduced. You can see the reduction, 22% fewer Article 15s, 17% fewer chapters, and 52% fewer course marshals. And so that's what we're getting out of this. And I think the common denominator is education, both through resiliency, educating soldiers in the skills necessary to deal with bad news, that there are alternatives, that suicide is a short-term solution to a long-term problem, and that pursuing their education goals is good. Next slide. And so down at the bottom cloud, you can see that suicide ideations and attempts, and the self-referral and non-professional, I think, will continue to increase as we continue to seed our units with soldiers who are trained in resiliency, because the radar is more sensitive now to that kind of behavior. Next slide. And this is my last slide. I think that we've always done a great job in the Army at teaching our leaderships how to conduct performance counseling. Okay, Jones, you failed your PT test. You didn't qualify your M16, so you're going to get some performance counseling. And we're really good at that. But what we're not really good at, but we're getting better, and we'll continue to get better, is behavioral counseling. As you get to know soldiers in your formation, as I explained to platoon sergeants, we need to be able to ask them questions like, hey, Jones, how do you handle bad news? You know, people handle bad news differently. Some people become recluse and quiet. Some people put their fist to a wall. Some people throw things. We all know that. We all react to bad news differently. And so it's important, I think, for our leadership to know that. And what do you do in your spare time? And how's your family? And what do you like? What do you don't like? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? And our leaders aren't necessarily skilled in conducting that type of counseling. And I think we can do better at that, because we've got to get to the level of fidelity in terms of understanding mood swings in our soldiers, so we recognize those signals when they're displaying them. Hey, Jones, you're not acting right. Something's going on. Do you get a bad letter? Do you get a phone call? And so, so that's the program we have in 2nd Infantry Division, and I think we're making a little bit of headway. Thank you.
Great insights. Thank you very much, sir. We're going to, Colonel Zacher, hang on one second. We're going to go to General Brooks. I think we got him back up, and we're going to go to the trifold slide and start from there. So, General Brooks, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, and really appreciate the discussion. So how do you hear me before I continue?
We are Lima Charlie, sir, and we're ready to go on the trifold slide.
All right, perfect. Well, I think you may have gotten some of the preamble discussion, and so let me just push in a couple of key things here. First, off of that trifold are links, and I encourage everyone to go pursue those links to get a bit more insight into the various programs that we try to put together as part of our overarching comprehensive fitness program. And as I was beginning to say, it is very important to us. We're thinking about how to enhance resiliency in the deployed force. We've got to think about what leads into deployment. Just like we enhance the combat skills of the deployed force, we do that before they get to combat, and we continue to do it while they're in combat. The same idea applies to resiliency, building it, sustaining it, and enhancing it. And so because of that, the left side of that trifold is about some of the things we do before deployment to give us an assessment of where the individual soldier is. We know what our collective assessments look like, but I think under this program of comprehensive soldier fitness, we've got to think differently about individual assessments. And I completely agree with Mike Tucker's comments about the types of questions that are asked. We have to teach leaders as part of this preparatory time, teach leaders how to ask the right kinds of questions that will give an assessment relative to the 5 pillars. And this is different than what we've all grown up doing. And so I strongly encourage that, and hopefully there'll be some questions about how you do that. Mike gave some great examples of the types of questions. Those are, my commander major said, those sound really familiar, because those are the same kinds of questions we'll ask a soldier. Find out really where they are relative to those pillars, and are they strengths or are those cracked pillars that will ultimately lead to a collapse. A couple of those programs that we have, the behavioral health training program is one I want to highlight first. We have created essentially a training structure that says that at each of these different levels of organization, there need to be people who are designated to have certain roles in our ability to check each other, talk to each other, help each other, teach each other. And that is an established set of rules now that lets us go that way. There are a number of tools that we all know about, and I won't go into detail on each one of those tools. Some of them are of benefit to health practitioners so that we have a pretty good view where a person stands clinically. Other ones are programs that help us gain an assessment from the command side, and I think both become very important. Even though we do have that separation that's necessary for privacy and protection, a good command and clinician relationship, especially in the deployed environment, can work through that. I get an update every week from my division surgeon and division psychiatrist, and they help me guide this program so that we spend a lot of time focused on the behavioral health aspect of it. Let me come to the deployed side here and talk about the real meat of the matter that we're looking for today. The essence of what lets us get after building and enhancing resiliency in the deployed force is continued engagement by leaders on those types of things we talked about, the continued building upon the assessment that we learned before deployment. We have to know where a soldier is coming in. We have to know what a soldier is going through during deployment. Sometimes it's just the key questions. But we also want to try to relate a combination of, think about 3 P's here for just a second. Practitioners, what are the practitioners who are actually available to assist our soldiers? Programs. In each location deployed, there are a variety of programs that are available to us. The Army has some great programs. But the third one is the important one. That's proximity. How do we bring together the practitioners, the programs, and the soldiers and the leaders in such a way that you can get advice and get exercise with the least amount of time or lost opportunity between those things? And so part of the way to do that, initiatives that we have ongoing. I was an active participant in the establishment of the Fort Hood Resiliency Campus. We've got efforts ongoing at Fort Riley as we're currently located. Our aviation.
Sir, I don't know if you can hear me, but we lost the connection, and we're going to try to bring you back during the question and answer period. So we're going to go ahead and move to Colonel Zacher. Sir, Frank, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank General Cornum for asking me to come here, or actually telling me to come here after, and I guess I deserve it. But I would ask, we got Eric Rogers out there, Captain Rogers. He's handing out some of these goal books right now, and if you could just pass those around, and they're not intended for you to walk out with. They're draft goal books from our brigade, but if you'd like one before you go, please see me and I'll get you one. Okay, I'm going to first talk real quick about a little bit about my background. I'm probably the only one up here, maybe Sergeant Major, who has actually gone to UPenn, learned the resilience and become a master resilience trainer and actually taught it to spouses and soldiers alike. And I remember when the Chief Staff of the Army was talking about this program at PCC it was about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and I thought, well, I'm never going to get touched by that. I'll be gone and through that before this thing ever takes off. Well, I had to stay at the War College for a little bit longer, waiting for command to open. I was told I'm going to bring comprehensive soldier fitness to the Army War College and implement it, and so that was, I guess I wasn't escaping CSF, and so I went down to talk to the comprehensive soldier fitness folks, and I asked them, to explain to me what this program was about and who were the POCs for each of these 5 dimensions. And they said, those POCs are in the office here. And I thought, well, geez, there's branches out there that can do this, and there's organizations much larger than this very small headquarters doing this, or this staff agency. And they said, why don't you just go to UPenn and take the course? So I did. And after I finished the course, the light went on for me. It wasn't necessarily about the dimensions at this point in my understanding of resiliency. What I figured out was it was about understanding the cognitive skills and the communication skills that go along with what master resilience trainers are trying to put into the minds of our soldiers and families. That's the key. Well, I left the school and I went back out and I showed the commandant a star with the 5 areas on each side, and I laid out where the garrison supported each of these areas. I said, we got it covered, boss, we're good. He said, but we're not covered on these MRT skills, and we got to do it. So that's why I taught it. And after a while, for me, the skills started to atrophy. Even though I was using them, if I hadn't been teaching them, it would have atrophied a lot faster. And I recognized at that point that there was something missing, and that was that this had to be taught in a way that would create habits. And so that was how I entered into the brigade as a commander 5 months ago. And then I was given the job of becoming the pilot program, or implementing the pilot program for USER. And the order was implement it, but we want you to tie everything in. Remember, there's a campus over here and all that. And I kept saying, it's not about the campus. It's about these cognitive skills. If we can get those cognitive skills in these soldiers' heads, but I'm the only one that's taken it, and I'm one of the only few of the folks that I was talking to, senior leaders, that had actually understood what these skills are. They're really powerful. So, fortunately, with the brigade, I'm able to implement this. I'm going to talk you through how this implementation began. And the first points I want to make right up front here, because as we run through this, and I'm very, very excited to tell you about it, but I want to make sure these points are with you early on, and you'll see how they'll come out. The cognitive skills are the basis for growth, and I believe that General Hertling has talked about growth, and same with General Tucker. It's growth that's what we're looking for. The habitual usage of them is our goal. And resilient people seem to be those people who are better communicators, better in a social environment, and better problem solvers. That's our resilient people. Now, you can ask your FRG leaders who are the most resilient, who do you think the most resilient are in your FRG, and they'll tell you it's the ones that are involved, the ones that are socially inclined, the ones that are connected. They are resilient. And the lights went on for me at that point, and I realized all of these cognitive skills are actually helping us become more social, and that's what we also heard that in different ways up here. And lastly, or second to last, it's preventative. And that's where Colonel Vail showed you the chart where we don't want to get into the intervention. We want to be preventative, right out front. We want to get that ahead of the curve. And I'm going to say it again. Resilience is not a place. It's a mindset. So I believe our whole place is our installation and our families and our soldiers. It's all there. It's just about how you think about it. Okay, next slide, please. So what we started is, we started with you see at the bottom here, we got to train MRTs. Well, right now we have a number of MRTs, and I'm proud to say that we have 4 volunteer MRTs that are FRG leaders. Now, General Cornum well, she wasn't very happy with me when I snuck those FRG leaders in. But she spared my life and allowed them to go through. And her response to me, or what she said to me was, we can't have these volunteers doing this because you can't expect that they're going to actually do it. And I said, well, what are you talking about, ma'am? We have FRG leaders who are putting thousands of hours as volunteers in, and we don't expect that. I mean, we expect them to do it, but they do it, and they're not being paid. And so, and I know she's going to kill me for this, but the volunteers that we have are our best MRTs. They are. They are so motivated and getting after it, and they're just excited about it because they can really see it, how it impacts the family. So, but we have first thing we had to do was we had to consolidate all the MRTs at the brigade level because otherwise they don't get utilized well enough. They have downtime. And second, you have to take the MRTs out of their primary job. So for instance, a platoon sergeant who's sent to training at UPenn came back, went back in a platoon sergeant job and thought that he or she was just going to be a platoon sergeant and every once in a while talk about this program. And I said, no, no, no. You're going to teach this full time until we get over the hump on this. So we're going to kind of take that pill. That was very unpopular, but it has been very effective. Then we created a class. It's a 16-hour MRT class, which is essentially taking all 28 hours and putting it into 16 hours. I taught that at the War College a number of times. It's effective, and at least people energized on the outside to still want more. And that more comes with the additional homework you see in that third block, or actually it's the second block going up. And the MRTs go out and check homework, and the homework is done by platoons because the training is done by platoons with a platoon leader and a platoon sergeant there present. And we have the FRG volunteers training the ladies or the spouses separately, and that's done in classes of about 24. And we currently have trained about 3/4 of the brigade already, and close to, I'd say just a little bit over 100 of our spouses already, and we've been at it for about a month. So the next part was, when I told the senior leaders, it was all about the cognitive skills. They basically, in USERD, said, no, it's not good enough, you need more. And I really kind of took a step back, and I thought, you know, I know, I got faith and confidence in my senior leaders, I'm missing something, I'm missing it, and I realized that, yes, it was about leveraging these additional, these support agencies that are all over. And how do you leverage them? That became the key because they're there already and they're underutilized. So we implemented an incentive program that would get soldiers and spouses excited to go out and see these support agencies or take advantage of social activities, and you're going to see some of that here. And then we, as a pilot, we were asked to get a baseline, and we're going to have another study come in just before we deploy. Next slide, please. Okay, first, just take a look at the chart here at the bottom. I say the basis for this is the 28 hours of MRT training. It is the key to all of this. We have two types of soldiers, and you know, we've got the high-risk soldiers, and we have those soldiers that haven't had any problems yet, and we're just hoping that they stay out of trouble and don't crash on us. And but we spend most of our time on the left side of that chart in the intervention part. That's where we've been focusing. And that's not resilience. Resilience is on the right side. It's preventative. So how do we get focused on that right side? Well, what we're going to do is provide incentives to get soldiers down that left side who have been identified as high risk, and then move them up the right side. And if you look on that right side, these are just examples, and they don't go up in a hierarchy. It's not, you don't have to enroll in the FRG event and end with a MIFLIC. These are just simply examples. There's a number of activities which I'm going to show you. But when you take all the activities on the installation, every one of them, you can tie them directly to one of the 5 dimensions easily. So let's go to the next slide, please. And you can see there a number of those agencies are in those 5 areas. So imagine if you and yours has done all of these activities or taken part in all these activities. Imagine how involved you would be, how socially inclined you would become after, how many connections you would make. And potentially, with the resiliency skills, the cognitive skills that you have, you could actually have some synergy now with these particular events. And you could really start to get the benefits from them if you're using them. And then, as I said before, we've known this for a long time. The struggle is actually getting folks to do it. Now, we have a way to get folks into these events and into these activities. To reduce the risk. You go to the next slide, please. We have assigned up. I think we go one back. Maybe we. Okay, go 2 ahead. I'm sorry. We must have. One more, please. One more. Keep going. One more. Oops, it fell off. Okay, I'll talk you through. What we have is a number of activities. Go back, please. That's good right there. A number of activities, and I'll give you some examples. Let's say family. You could get 15 points if your spouse went to MRT training. If your spouse goes, you as a soldier get the points. If your spouse goes to the MRT training and then your spouse and you do some sort of event, whether, let's just use, for example, in the spiritual, you go to a chapel or to a worship service or to a religious study, you get points for that. And if you go to the wellness clinic, for instance, on the physical side, you would get 10 points for that. If your spouse goes to the wellness clinic, she gets 10 points, and that applies to your points as a soldier. And all these points are being added up by the leadership at the squad level. You get a goal book, and in that goal book, you actually mark down that you've gone to these activities, or taken part in these activities, and gone to these events. And in fact, what we've done is we've brought all of the support agencies on our installations in Grafenwehr and Schweinfurt, and we've given them stamps. They're the Black Hawk 172 stamps. And when soldiers go there, or a family member, they get stamped piece of paper, and they bring it back to their squad leaders, proof that they've been there. And so it's bringing the entire community together to understand that they're all part of resiliency and building resiliency. And they're very excited about it. I mean, they are looking for this because they feel underutilized right now. Now they're concerned about being overutilized. But we assure them that you can only do what you can do, and we'll eventually kind of peter out, and we'll now reach a point, we'll plateau probably about somewhere right before deployment, and then it'll go down again, and the next unit that's there will pick it up.
Frank, can you wrap up so
Yep,
we can get
I
to Sergeant
sure
Major? Just short on time.
Okay. The incentive program on that slide, you can see that it's also individual and unit incentives. The basis for it is leadership. Leadership's got to be involved, and that goal book is instrumental in keeping this program moving. And the squad leader, my last point is the goal book is not just a simple goal book. Unit squad leaders have to go out and ask the soldiers about their GAT, ask them what their priorities are going to be, then they've got to direct them in those different areas, and they've got to counsel them on a routine basis and use those counseling to help build them and achieve their goals in the end, and eventually a greater resiliency within the unit and lower risk. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for setting the example on a great program at brigade level. All right, Sergeant Major, take us home.
Okay. Thank you again for inviting me to sit on this panel. Give you a little history about myself, how I got started with the program. I'm out of headquarters TRADOC out of Fort Monroe, Virginia. And my job there, I was just coming off a mission of going around talking to the operational force, the key leaders, command sergeant majors and colonels who just came back from deployment, and also talking with key leaders in the TRADOC arena about our soldiers. We was getting calls saying that TRADOC was not sending them soldiers that was well equipped to prep for deployment, and leaders in TRADOC were saying there's a lot of stuff that we're putting on the soldiers already in the BCT. So after doing that, I get a phone call saying there's some more training that we want to put in the BCT. And all I was told, there's zero growth. So go up there, look at it, take a look at it, and I did. It was at the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Karen Ravitch was pitching this program in its entirety of not military, but how they train it. And as she was teaching these programs to us, she was teaching us competencies, the 6 competencies: self-awareness, self-regulation, connection, strength of character, mental agility, through skills. And I took myself out of the sergeant major role and put myself in the soldier's shoes. And I realized this is exactly what our soldiers need, these skills. And through that, I made a change. But I also wanted to put the skills through the test. One of the skills that was being taught was called active constructive responding. How do you react when people share good news with you? I was doing military, 2 small kids, and sometimes I would have to pick up my kids, and I have to get my son because my wife was still at work. And as we came through the door, he would always try to tell me how his day was going. And I said, not right now. Let me take off the uniform, take off my boots, you know. And well, after I wind down and come back to him, my son was gone. That moment was gone. So I'd applied these skills. I wanted to see that they work. So I walked through the door, and he goes to tell me how was his day. And without saying a word, I went into the conversation. I shared his good news. And that builds such a strong connection right then and there that to this day, even this morning when I talk to my son, the first thing out of his mouth is, "Dad, how's your day going?" We still have that connection, and it's strong. I talk about this program passionately. And of course, like I said, my wife was in the military, so she gets to hear my stories. She gets to hear my passion. Well, now she is a trainer down at Victory University doing the exact same thing, training our soldiers these skills. So I've been a